Warning: the following podcast contains irreverent humor, uneducated and exceptionally nerdy opinions, potential cursing, and plenty of love for the prequels. If any of the preceding offends you, please turn off your computer immediately, and may the Force be with you.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf-herder!
You can't use that word! Only we can use that word!
We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
You're tuned in to the Nerfherder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate, featuring your hosts, JT. I mean, they killed his mother. What's he supposed to do? Send him a postcard? I wish you wouldn't have done that. AJ.
I was so hoping this was going to be a family show, too.
Oh, my God. Steve.
It's our goal to be played over the loudspeakers in the bathrooms during celebration.
On this episode of the Nerfherder Council, we've got no John, almost no Steve, an interview in video game news, and a fat joke. Enjoy.
This is the Nerfherder Council.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nerfherder Council. My name is AJ. Usually we have John and Steve on board, but this week I am flying solo. We've got a different kind of show for you this week. Normally we just do our usual banter and topic conversation, but for once we finally have a new bit of content to bring you. Yeah, new content on the show. What a surprise, right? We've actually got an interview for you today. We scheduled our first interview ever, and of course I think it's a good one because I was the one doing it, but I'm really excited to bring this to you. But we can't quite get too far ahead of ourselves. The reason we don't have John and Steve, for example, is because, well, if you're a Clevelander like I am, and Steve, and John, one thing that never happens in this town is a sports championship. We are legendary in this town for having never won a single major sports championship in 52 years. But I am happy to report that that is no longer the case. Our Cleveland Cavaliers have finally brought home a championship to the mistake on the lake, and now we are the 2016 NBA World Champions. As a result, though, things around this town have gotten a little crazy over the past week. In addition to spending all the time watching the games and whatnot, which interrupted our usual recording schedule, there was also a championship parade on our makeup day, and when 1.3 million people descend on the downtown of your city, it tends to disrupt everything. So we didn't have a host for it because he was in the throng, and we didn't have any internet access that was reliable to record remotely because even telecom was affected by that many people. So it's for very good reasons and very happy reasons that we had to do a different kind of show this week. But I do promise that we will be back on our regular stupid schedule next week, actually. We're only going to take 7 days off between this episode and the next just to get back on schedule and give you guys the fix of the kind of stupid brand of humor that you've come to expect from us. If you're looking for insight, you still got to find another podcast, but that's okay because we've got one for you here, and I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. Now, it's great that the Cavs won the title and all of that, but that doesn't mean that the Star Wars world has been standing still. So I wanted to talk briefly about a few quick hits of things that have gone on in the Star Wars world since our last recording. First of which being, and probably the most important, hey, I just noticed all my notes here on news, they're all video game related. So it looks like video games are the hot ticket right now. As you know, we do our usual Battlefront updates from time to time. And there's actually a big one this time because for anyone with the season pass, they have gotten 2-week early access to all the downloadable content. And the Cloud City or Bespin DLC has been released to them already. So this is pretty cool. The DLC includes 2 new characters, Lando Calrissian and Dengar, of all people. I guess they're kind of scraping now. And 2 new maps. They've got the main courtyard and city area of Bespin, and they've also got the carbon freezing chamber and all the bowels of Bespin, so to speak. I've checked it out briefly. The maps are pretty cool. They're super detailed, which I love, and especially the layout of the main city it's wide open, so it's a totally different style of gameplay than we're used to. And it's just really the thing to do with this map is to play as Lando, because there is nothing cooler, and I've said this before, there is nothing cooler than capes. I wish capes came back. That needs to be a fashion, and it's just great to go storming around Bespin with Lando Calrissian and that awesome royal blue cape of his. Looks phenomenal. So I'm going to give the DLC a rating of 4 capes out of 4 for capiness. And I really don't have anything more to say about it because I haven't played the game enough to comment on anything else. I will say something that's interesting about the content, though. The blasters that they've introduced in this do have some new abilities, and normally that's not really of interest to me, but the blasters themselves are coming now from other source material. They mentioned that they took the design of one of the blasters from, I think it's an episode of Rebels, they said. They noticed the gun design in there, and the game designers liked it so much that they built it into the DLC. So it's great to see this kind of cross-pollination going on between shows and video games and whatnot. Speaking of new home console video games, coming up this Tuesday, we've got the release of Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens, which is normally not that big of note. I mean, Lego Star Wars games have been coming out forever, but this one looks to be really, really cool. I downloaded a playable demo of the first level on PS4, and the graphics are amazing. The gameplay is a lot of fun. Anyone who's played these games, you know that they're really, really a blast to play. And interestingly enough, though, one of the things I remember about the previous games is that it was always nonverbal. They never had any speaking in the games. It was always just visual gags and slapstick and maybe a grunt or noises here and there, but no actual speaking. That's not the case in this one. And if you want to correct me on this, because I don't have a full knowledge of the rest of the series, I don't remember that being part of it before, but in this one, they actually have lines from the movie. The characters are voiced by the movie actors. So you get Daisy Ridley talking as Rey. You get John Boyega talking as Finn. It's really interesting. I'm not sure if I'm on board with that or not. I kind of liked the playful, childish way that they presented the games before. So the dialogue takes a little bit of getting used to. But the really interesting thing that I found about this was it's not just dialogue cut from the movies. There's additional levels and scenarios in the game. And they got, from what it sounds like, they got the actors to record new lines for the video game exclusively. So it's kind of cool. It's a different take on the story a little bit because you've got to build out the levels for gameplay purposes. So you do a lot more stuff than had to happen in the movie. And you get more of the actors being the characters. So I found that part really cool and really entertaining. Another thing that I noticed, I looked up videos. They've released advanced videos of the space battles and the flight missions out in space for the game too. And I noticed that like one of the levels had it was through an asteroid field. You're flying the Millennium Falcon, or is it Poe's X-wing? It's one of the ships from the movie, of course, and of course the ship looks like the Lego set that they built off of it. But you're also escorting Admiral Akbar in the Anakin's custom Jedi starfighter set that is based on the original Clone Wars cartoon from 2000. I want to say 5. I think it's 2005 if I remember correctly. So that whole storyline about Admiral Akbar having that starship actually comes from the Droid Tales cartoon on Cartoon Network. So once again, we're seeing one property bleed into another. That, of course, has nothing to do with the Force Awakens movie, but it does have everything to do with other Lego Star Wars properties. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's kind of nice to see that any format that you pick up your Star Wars in nowadays, you're going to get some crossover into other areas. It makes it all feel very unified. It's pretty entertaining that way. But the last, guys, I saved the best for last. One of the other things, also video game news, that is relatively new in the Star Wars universe is Star Wars Battle Pod. The game itself, Battle Pod, has been out in arcades for I think a year or two, maybe 3 now. But the news here is that they've added a new level. They had everything based on the original trilogy, right? Well, it's not the case anymore. Now they've got a new level. It is the battle on Takodana from The Force Awakens, and it is awesome. Oh my, is it so good. So good. I want to order it as an entree and get a side of Battle Pod and wash it down with a tall glass of Battle Pod and finish it off with a slice of Battle Pod cheesecake. So much fun. It's so cool. Okay, so I'll set this up for you. You're actually playing in the Battle of Takodana when General Leia is trying to get to Maz's castle and join in on the battle when the First Order invades with Kylo Ren. You're in an X-Wing, and you're escorting the transport with Leia on board. So you're blasting TIE fighters out of the sky. You've got to shoot TIE fighters off of the transport's back. You're seeing scenes from the movie. If you haven't played the game before, it's a first-person flight simulator game, but it's a flight simulator on rails, meaning you don't actually get to steer in any old direction. Your flight path is pre-programmed by the game, and all you're doing is moving the joystick around to adjust your targeting sight and blow up targets. While that's not quite as cool as being completely free-range motion, the nice thing about that is you get scenes like this where they're trying to recreate a movie scene, and they can do it because they control where the camera goes. And I swear to you, there are so many times in playing this level that it was the exact scene out of the movie. Like the scene from the trailer, for example, where it shows the view of the X-Wing chasing down the TIE fighter as they're plummeting towards the coastline on Takodana from overhead. That is exactly verbatim duplicated in the game. It is so cool. And to flesh out the experience, they've got the Episode 7 music going underneath it. If you've got the soundtrack, I think that the track is called March of the Resistance, actually. It's just the Resistance theme itself. And, I listened to the soundtrack before. I bought it when it came out because I totally geeked out over anything new Star Wars when Force Awakens was released. And while I like the soundtrack, I really haven't lived with it long enough to really absorb it and make it feel like it's part of the larger Star Wars universe. It's just more John Williams music, which is never a bad thing. But the themes themselves have only been heard a little bit in movies so far. So it hasn't quite sunk in that this is really Star Wars music yet. But when you play this video game and you've got March of the Resistance blasting in your ears as you're gunning down TIE fighters with reckless abandon, I will tell you, it is so incredible. And you feel, maybe even more so in this one, because they were able to replicate shots from the movie, you feel like you're in the movie. The original trilogy levels, they didn't try to replicate the cinematography because a lot of those battle scenes weren't shot in such a way that you were pulled into the cockpit. Yes, there were a few cockpit shots from X-Wings, like in the trench run of the Death Star and whatnot, but most of the scenes in the video game are just in the video game. They weren't able to replicate a shot that came from one of the films. They were only able to replicate the settings. But when you're actually in a scene and viewing it from the exact same angle as the movie was filmed, it pulls you in such an engrossing way. The cool thing about this, it's at Dave & Buster's, so if you've got a Dave & Buster's location near you, get out to it immediately. They've got a promotion going right now. Yes, another free plug for another brand. We should really start charging for advertisers. The thing that they've got going at Dave & Buster's right now is if you get a power card, I think $10 or more or something like that, you can get a free play on 4 of, I think, like 8 or 10 new games that they just got in the last month. So while as cool as BattlePod is, and I love playing it, I've done the math, and basically through their credit system, I'm doing air quotes right now since you can't see me, since their quote-unquote credit system makes it really hard to figure out how much money you're actually spending, the way it works out for BattlePod is $3 a play. which love the game, but no way does it last long enough to be worth $3 every time you re-up your continues. So this free play special is incredible because you get in there for free. Now, you only get one play. You can't use all 4 of your free plays on one game, but at least you get to get in there, try out the new level, and if you love it that much, sure, swipe your card through for a continue and see if maybe, unlike me, you can actually get General Leia safely to the ground instead of having her get blasted out of the sky with Maz's castle only about 20 feet away. I swear, I think the way my Force Awakens movie plays out is actually where instead of the TIE fighters swooping in and demolishing the statue of Maz on top of her castle, I think what actually happens, at least in my version in BattlePod, is Leia's transport gets shot down and crashes through the statue instead. So I'm not really the best ace pilot. I'm no Poe Dameron, but it's okay. It's okay. We've got Poe, so we don't need AJ. At least not in the seat of an X-Wing. Okay, so I hope you're not too bored with all the video game news because, well, that is all the news pretty much. We don't have an official release date for Rebels Season 3 yet, and we've got some Rogue One news, but nothing really concrete. And we're gonna hold off until next week to talk about that stuff on the show when we've got all 3 of us to bounce some ideas off of. All right, so without further ado, since you probably all tuned out by now anyway, we've got the interview lined up for you. I want to set this up. This is the coolest thing. I've been wanting to do this for a while. We're a relatively new show, but one of the greatest things about being a Star Wars fan is the community. The community is what really makes Star Wars thrive. This is why Star Wars Celebration exists and all this cool stuff on the internet and podcasts like ours and things like that. Well, I've been pushing for a while on the show. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to get some other people involved with the show. That's why we have the 4th mic, the Moof Milker mic. I'm always talking to my friends for show ideas or what do they think about this or that, just to get a sense for what other people are thinking and have to say about Star Wars, what's on their mind. But the sad fact is I kind of suck at social media. It's not my thing. If I had to coin a phrase, it would be anti-social media because most of the stuff I look at on there, I just kind of roll my eyes and the best I can do is not comment back to be one of those jerks. So fortunately, we have someone like Steve on the show who is actually very good with social media, loves Twitter. In fact, you don't even bother calling that dude if you ever have his number. Try a text, but if you really want to get in touch with him fast, just tweet at him. He's fine. He's all over Twitter. So he's the one that runs the primary Twitter account for us at NHC Podcast. Well, we actually got we were really excited because we didn't have any traction when we first started the show, of course, because we were new and we weren't out there yet. No one had heard of us. So every little thing that's come along in the show so far, like the May the 4th special when we actually just put it up within like 45 minutes of recording, that was cool. Every time we get a new follow on Twitter or a new like of our Facebook page, it's all kind of like a big deal for us still because this is all new and every little bit of traction that we gain is kind of cool. So we got a follow from a show called Blabba the Hutt, Blabba the Hutt. And we were like, oh, this is cool. Okay, someone found us that we didn't go out and solicit. So we're starting to get some traction, right? People are finding us on Twitter. Awesome sauce. Well, Steve decided to check out who Blabba the Hutt is. We found out it's another podcast. We're thinking, that's actually kind of cool. Podcasting in general is a very closely networked community. It's very rare that you just have one dude sitting in, I don't know, say his apartment's kitchen recording. So usually you've got other people on the show. You've got other shows that you talk to. A lot of people are on multiple shows themselves. Maybe they've got one on one topic and then they have a second show on another topic with another group of people. And we decided to check out this Blabba the Hutt thing, and we found out that it's another Star Wars podcast. So we give it a couple of listens, and it's really a great show. It's very well connected. They're tied in. They're tweeting back and forth at people, and they're getting interviews with the creators of Star Wars, people that work on the comic books or authors from the books or someone who was maybe involved in the production of one of the films or Rebels or something, or merchandise creators of some kind. They've always got someone that they're talking to. It's so cool. We decided to drop them a line and just see, like, what's up, guys? See what they could tell us, see what kind of insights they had. And we actually got a dialogue going back and forth with them. It was super cool. Well, come to find out, the show is less than a year old. It's kind of an amazing story how they started out and then just bullheadedly rushed forward, and just by sheer force of will and talking to people, oh my God, strange thing, right? Used social media to talk to people. They ended up getting a bunch of traction, and it's a really, really cool couple of people. They've got their main host based in Ireland, Jamie, and they've got Kate based in California, actually. So we ended up getting an interview set up, and unfortunately, it was at a time when John, the main host here, was not able to make it. We had to record on a Sunday morning because when you're trying to work out when someone who's in Ireland and some people who are in the Eastern U.S. time zone and someone who is on the West Coast time zone of the United States can all be awake and available at the same time, it's a little difficult. So we did a Sunday morning recording, and it just so happened to be a morning that John was driving back from being out of town playing with his band from the night before. So he was not able to attend the interview. I still don't know if he's listened to it yet, but that's another story. So the interview is just Steve and myself talking to Jamie and Kate from Blabba the Hutt. And we cover a bunch of good topics in this. I want to set this up for you a little bit. We've edited down the interview because there's frankly a lot of banter and figuring out how to use Skype properly at the beginning. One of the advantages of being all friends and based in the same city is that, unlike most podcasts, we get together in a physical location every time we record this, so we don't have to figure out how to do things over Skype. We just hit a button in the same room and see each other from across the table and do our show that way. So when we had to dial in to Ireland over Skype, it took us a few minutes to sort that out. So we cut out all the boring bits for you. And just to have some fun with it, I decided as I was going off to start this interview, I figured, why not get a question from somebody else to kick off the interview? So I decided to ask my girlfriend's 10-year-old for a question and see what he wanted to know most, since I told him I was going to be speaking to someone who was actually on the set of episode 8, and that's where the interview picks up, actually. And he might not have had the best question to lead off with, but it's what was on the mind of a 10-year-old. So without further ado, let's kick it over to the interview and our first question. Is Finn still annoying?
Aww.
Well, Finn,
Not annoying.
he's not C-3PO annoying.
Or Jar Jar.
Or Jar Jar. Finn wasn't on Shooting Ireland, unfortunately. So John Boyega is still someone that I've yet to meet.
So his annoyance is spread to somewhere else in the galaxy.
I think it's somewhere else. I'm not quite sure. Actually, where is John Boyega filming? There's been nothing about John Boyega.
Yeah, we try
That's interesting.
to stay relatively spoiler free around here, so I don't keep up on all the latest filming details.
Yeah.
But he did have time to do the Saturday Night Live skit a little while ago.
Yeah, no, but I just think from a filming point of view, I know that the name of the girl that I can't think about. Remember the Asian girl that was cast? Supposedly her storyline will interlink with John Boyega's, but there's been very little actual filming news about him. I'm just literally just throwing shit out here.
Well, I could see, because most of the stuff going on in Ireland is all related to Ochto, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. The guys that were there was Daisy Ridley, Mark Hamill, and Adam Driver. So everything that happens there is kind of concentrated around those three characters.
So you actually spotted them on set when you were there?
Oh yeah, no, I met them all. Well, I didn't. When I say I met Adam, Adam's a very quiet, very reserved person. So he kind of just walked from trailer to set to trailer. But I was there when he was let's say, between takes. But Daisy I met, Mark I met, Kathy Kennedy I met. I didn't actually get to talk to Ryan Johnson, but he seems, and everybody that I know that's met him has nothing but good things to say about him. Chloe Bruce, Kathy Kennedy, yeah, it was like there was a huge ensemble of people there that it was very hard because I wasn't allowed to fanboy. So I was technically working, so.
Working?
Technically.
Yeah, technically.
What technically were you doing?
A podcaster, unfortunately.
So you were technically doing what then?
I was Sherpa for 2 days. So basically just looking after gear, moving stuff from one thing to the next. The second day I was moving between all the sets. Now I think a lot of my work was handed to me based on the fact that they wanted me to get around to as many sets as I could because they knew I had a keen interest. So my second day was like I had all the food from the catering and I had to drop them up to all the different sets. But as I got to each of the sets, they were like, "Oh, come on up and I'll show you." So I got to stand on all the sets and see everything, you know.
Oh, that's amazing. How different does a set look in the live version versus the movie? How much of that is filming and lighting and camera versus on set?
I mean, obviously the only thing we have to work with there is Skellig Michael. Now, they didn't shoot on Skellig Michael this time round. They cheated it with a couple of different locations on the mainland. So, but from what I've heard and from what I've seen of Skellig Michael, what you saw at the end of The Force Awakens is exactly what you would see when you go to Skellig Michael. So Skellig Michael is an island that's 11 kilometers off the coast of Ireland.
Wow,
and it's literally just one little island.
So even the water surrounding it is actually real. They didn't have to digitally extend that or anything?
No. The only thing they digitally extended is when the Falcon flies in at the end.
Mm-hmm.
They actually dropped in a couple of other smaller islands around it. It's actually the Skelligs. There is a cluster of small islands, but there's not as many as you see on that initial shot as the Falcon flies in. But literally, once Rey steps foot on R2, everything else is there. Even the birds, the greenery, all the beehive huts that you see, everything is there. Even that slate that they say is a gravestone.
Yeah.
That's there. It's actually just a piece of rock.
Do they have any theories for what that stuff is actually there for in real life? Those little huts, all the rocks and stuff?
It's an old monasteric site. So it's kind of actually very close and very fitting to why Luke is there, which is it was where monks back in, I think it was like the 18th century, hermitized themselves and lived on their own away from society, which is really, really similar to what we believe has happened with Luke Skywalker, that he's actually gone out for religious or for, meditative purposes and reclused himself from everybody else that he's known. And that's actually was the original purpose and the original reason that the beehive huts were there in the first place. One of the other islands was used in some of the Harry Potter films, and that's how JJ was told of it. He was given a tip to say, "Look, go check out these islands. I shot there on, I think it was the Deathly Hallows Part 1, maybe, where Harry and Dumbledore go to, I don't know, there's some cave or something with Horcruxes. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I could run upstairs and get my wife. She'd probably be able to tell you the exact moment.
But yeah, so that's actually one of the Skelligs as well. It's not Skellig Michael, it's one of the other ones. And I think they only use the exterior and then all the interior is all a soundstage. But it was a tip given to JJ from the producers of that film to go out and check these islands out. And as soon as he saw it, he was like, "I'm going to shoot it."
Now that you've said that, it's actually not surprising. My girlfriend is into Harry Potter as I am into Star Wars. So I've been crash coursing on that, trying to get up to speed on all of it. And as I was reading that passage in the book and they're describing the setting, the first thing I thought of was Skellig Michael, like how similar that seemed geographically to what they were describing in the book. So them filming there is no surprise. We actually have a lot of filming going on in Cleveland for various movies, but a lot of people, especially our audience, don't really know how that works on a regular basis. How did you actually get involved with the production?
Well, you see, Ireland is such a small place, and it's scary how small it is sometimes. We've only got a population of just under 5 million people. on the whole island. And what happens is when something like Star Wars rolls into town, everybody knows about it, and the production actually hire a lot of local help in order to just do all the dog work, all the Sherping, all the security, catering, all that is locally hired. So I know somebody who knows somebody who was able to say, look, this guy, give him a couple of days on location. He's, it was 2 days of hard work. I'll tell you that. It was 2 days of hard work, because it's carrying gear up and down a hill, multiple times. You're basically transporting Hollywood from the edge of a cliff back up onto the mainland. So with that, of course, being a Star Wars fan, I'm gonna jump on that opportunity. But no, it is fundamentally down to Lucasfilm and Disney coming in and basically bringing their core group of guys in, and then everything else that could be outsourced locally was outsourced locally. So like all the security, all the kind of safety guys, all them were sourced from local talent.
And what's a day on the set like?
Long. We were shooting down off Dunmore Head, and the whole day was spent trying to get one. I'd say, even if it makes it into the film, I'd say you're talking about 15-20 seconds worth of footage. We happen to get 2 really nice days, which is unusual in Ireland. But no, it's long, and they bring in the talent as they need it, and then they're swapping it out with Daisy Ridley actually has 2 stunt doubles, one for fighting and then one for running, and then Daisy steps in for obviously all the facial shots and whatnot. So Chloe Bruce was down the day that we were there. That's her fighting double, and she was actually stepping in for most of the shots, and then when they needed Daisy was pulled in. But Daisy was down there for the majority of the time. But it's great, it's long, it's laborious, it's not actually as glamorous as you'd imagine. You're standing on the coast, the southwest coast of Ireland, which is quite rough anyway. Mm-hmm. So the wind is beating against you, the sun is beating down on top of you. I am, ginger and fair skinned, which doesn't mix, unfortunately, with with the sun, So it was tough, but it was good. It was really good.
And then how did that lead to you getting to meet Mark and Daisy and?
Just through. It was on the second day that I was there that we were shooting internally, so they had a lot of time to kind of kick back, because the second day was a lot more ground down because it was internal. They had a lot more restriction over who gets in to see what the shooting is, and between all the shots, the cast were just hanging about and just chilling, and just actually Daisy is particularly good at. She just had the crack with all of the production staff. She literally just stood and, everybody was friends, and she was, climbing walls with them, and she even at one point was dancing with them, showing one how to waltz. But, just between shots, everybody was just kind of shooting the breeze and just chilling and whatnot. And that's when I was able to kind of, introduce myself, just say hello. Again, I was working, so I wasn't a Star Wars blogger or podcaster when I was on set, because obviously that would have got me kicked out very swiftly. So I was just, a regular Joe who was just introducing to the people that he was told, in inverted commas, were important,
See, that's got to be so hard, being in front of all those people, trying to act like you have no greater interest in the subject material. Like, oh, Star Wars, actually, what's this thing?
The hardest was the first day when we were shooting on Dunmore Head. I was actually up the top of... Okay, so if you can imagine, Dunmore Head is like it's actually the most western point of Ireland. If you go any further west, next piece of land that you're going to hit is America. So we were, if you imagine, you have to go up a hill to go down a hill, down onto the actual, like, the sheer coast. So I was up the top of the hill, and Daisy Ridley arrives. And I was told, right, come down here and we're going to give you your spot. Okay? So me, one other guy, Daisy, and Daisy's PA walked down Dunmore. Like, there was 4 of us. Okay? This is the first time I've seen Daisy Ridley in the flesh. And in my mind, I was like, holy shit. I was like, what is even going on here? This is the most outrageous thing in the whole world.
Right, it's got to be surreal.
Time, like that, it was so hard not to just lose my mind and become a complete fangirl.
You just want to blurt out, I want to talk to you on my podcast.
That's it. Yeah.
Please.
Well, that was another thing I was told. I was like, you cannot say anything about this. Like, and to be fair, like I'm kind of not. I'm not saying anything to you guys that I wouldn't say to, any of my friends in the pub or whatever. Like, I mean, the one thing I would be very respectful is I've seen a lot by way of content, and I've talked to a lot of people who are working on different sets at different times. I mean, the shoot was nearly 2 weeks long. I was only there for 2 days of it, and I can kind of piece together what's going to happen in Ireland, but I'm obviously quite respectful of everybody, and I'm not going to put anybody in at a risk if the storyline got out.
You're holding a lot in until episode 8 comes out, huh?
Man, there's like another year and a bit to go.
just holding your breath until that movie comes out. And then you'd be like, see, that's exactly what I saw, and I was going to tell you, but I couldn't. And
After I finished the first day shoot, the first thing I did was entered the Star Wars blogosphere and was like, right, what did the paparazzi get? What did the local media snap? What are people saying went on in the shoot today? Blah, blah, blah. And I was reading it all.
So you can see what's safe to talk about?
Exactly. So, no, but not even that, but just to see, are they getting it right? Are they getting it wrong? Now that I actually know what happened, how right was the likes of Making Star Wars or the likes of, the kind of Star Wars blogs, and a lot of them were wrong. And it's just funny because you take what they say almost as gospel, even though it's totally rumors.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it's like, is this the reason that we saw that? Is that the reason that we saw that? And I'm sitting there going, no, that's definitely, none of that is right.
It's so much of Star Wars fandom is speculation anyway. We were actually thinking it would be an entertaining show topic to go back to one of our first episodes where we were trying to make predictions about The Force Awakens before having seen it, and just see how far off we were from everything from the trailers.
Yeah, I don't even know what we were talking about at that point.
Yeah, that was there was so much from the trailers that they cut it together in such a way it was misleading perfectly, like the scene of the Knights of Ren, for example, from Rey's Force Vision and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a blip in the movie, but everyone was speculating that there was this huge new Sith faction going on and all this craziness that has yet to materialize.
And I suppose the handing over of Luke's lightsaber, Maz's hand, that shot actually was never in the film, I don't think.
Yeah, that's not even fair. They put scenes in the trailer that don't even make it to the cut. I still want to know where Constable Zuvio is. You thought we would have seen a deleted scene of that or something by now, because I've got stills of it that look finished. They've made action figures. He's clearly a character that was fully fleshed out and realized, and according to the special features on the Blu-ray, it never existed.
Yeah, no, the Zuvio thing is something that just completely blew my mind, because like that, he was wave 1 of the Black Series, and there's more worthy characters who haven't even got a Black Series figure yet. I mean, we only got Ahsoka there, in the last wave. It's so how did they choose Zuvio to be the first wave of Force Awakens characters?
Yeah, I remember back when Phantom Menace came out, and Rick O'Lee was one of the lead figures. And everyone thought, oh, he's going to be this great new fighter pilot. No, he's just going to point out the controls on the dashboard, Anakin.
There you go.
So, with being on the set of Episode 8 and being a podcaster, you guys constantly straddle this line. We have this debate, too, as far as what we're going to cover on our show. How do you straddle the line between news and spoilers?
We generally, and Kate, definitely jump in if you have anything. We kind of we choose what we found interesting. So, I mean, we don't report on everything, and, it's very hard to report on everything, especially, when you podcast once every 2 weeks. We try, where spoilers are potentially going to be evident, to obviously call them out. But what we like to do, I think, quite a lot, especially Rogue One is probably a good example, where we're speculating around, the trailer or, a news story that broke. For instance, when the book was revealed there with all the schematics and character descriptions and stuff like that, we'd talk about it, but we wouldn't necessarily... I don't know. I mean, spoilers is something that I feel that as a podcaster, people either come to you for spoilers or come to you for discussion. And I think Blabba sits more in the discussion rather than spoilers.
And definitely any officially released stuff we discuss.
Yeah, Yeah, we do the same. With respect to your fandom, though, do you find you have to dig a little deeper than you would otherwise want to just to stay abreast and informed for your show?
Sometimes. I mean, I generally don't really mind. Like, I enjoy everything about Star Wars, including the kind of run-in and the buzz around a new film. And the joys of the internet age is information has never been more available to us. So I enjoy that buzz of being able to kind of pick up stories here and there. With respect to, you see, it's funny, we've got no strict spoiler policy. But what we do say is at the start of a segment, we'll say, we're going to talk about Rogue One here. And if you are trying to stay spoiler free, then skip on. I mean, the usual kind of carry on is that we would try and give any kind of a warning ahead of it. But from a digging point of view, if something piques my interest, I'll read it. And if I feel that then is something that I feel that our community, because we're so active on Twitter, I kind of have a general, generally a good idea of who my community is, what they like to talk about, and how far down the line they go. And that's just a result of being so kind of active on Twitter. So with that, then we as a team, me and Kate, will generally ahead of every show kind of discuss what topics are going to work for each individual show and how far into each of them we're going to go. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to be more of a discussion, information. What people actually tend to tell us about Blabba the Hutt is that they like it actually when we go into things like comics or EU, when we start to expand on the stories that they know about, because a lot of people don't have the time to go into books and to go into comics and to kind of learn about what the characters do when they're not in The Force Awakens. We can, we've got a planned roundtable for Bloodline, which people will then hopefully tune into in order to understand what happened in Bloodline, because they don't have necessarily got the time to invest into the book.
I just finished that book myself, actually, and unfortunately, I'm of the non-movie material, I'm pretty much the only one of the three that tries to stay somewhat abreast of those things. So
it's tough.
I'm constantly chomping at the bit to get some of that on this show, but I just don't have anyone to banter with. So it's a lonely existence here.
Well, maybe we'll get you into that roundtable.
Oh, that'd be fabulous.
We try to bring as many kind of different voices and different tones, and with the team that has been assembled for Blabba the Hutt, everybody has their own kind of, everybody has their own niche and their own interests. So we've got Rod is a hardcore EU fan. Matt is an actor, which gives a whole different perspective on everything. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Gary, who is just, I think if you picked Gary's mind apart and stuck it into a book, it would just be the Star Wars encyclopedia. The guy just seems to know everything about everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The roundtable that you had for the Rebels finale, there were so many different voices and perspectives on there, and just fountains of knowledge coming out from all sides that I had no idea about.
That's Gary and Rod, to be fair. I mean, I'm going to put my hands up and say I chaired that discussion, but I mean, from a deeper knowledge, it's Rod. I know Rod actually, specifically because he was watching Rebels and constantly coming back to me and saying, "Oh, they did that in this book and they did this in that book." Because I'm a self-confessed fan of the EU, but I haven't read a lot of it. I like a lot of the old stories, and I've kind of, read a little bit at a top level, but from an actual, diving into individual books, I've done very, very little of it. So to have Rod and to have Gary be able to help me, that's what this team is all about. It's about bringing everybody's individual strengths together and creating something that hopefully people enjoy.
Yeah, your show is really comprehensive like that, between the content on your website and the topics that you cover and the interviews you get on your show. It's amazing how well connected you are for being such a relatively new show.
Yeah, actually, well, I mean, Kate will tell you it's been a whirlwind of a year. I think, to be honest with you, a lot of it's luck. A lot of it is, the Irish are a little bit, I don't know, bullheaded. So we'll just do things. We'll just ask people. So a lot of the interviews that we get is just down to just saying, "Hey, you, come talk to us," And the funny thing is that 9 times out of 10, people will say, "Yeah, no problem."
Well, yeah, this whole thing came about because you followed us on Twitter first.
Twitter is where Blabba lives, essentially. I mean, we have a Facebook, we have Pinterest, YouTube, The website's great, actually. The website is something that I made a choice. I was like, look, we need longer form content than 140 characters on a tweet. This is how we're going to do it. But Twitter for me was the big winner for Blabba the Hutt. To be able to talk to people, because with a podcast, and the reason that I started the podcast is because I was listening to other people's podcasts and saying, geez, I'd love to have that conversation with them,
Mm-hmm.
So with a podcast, you're putting all these, these questions and this conversation into the ether, and this new medium, which is Twitter, gives people a way to talk back to about the topics and I mean, challenge you and expand on what you know. So I mean, it takes the podcast conversation and brings it onto a whole new level where people can actually contribute and feel like they can contribute. And one of the things that comes back about us is that we're so active, and we talk to everybody, and nearly every tweet that comes in I try to engage with and reply. And I mean, one thing that I feel is that if somebody takes the time to talk to us, we should reciprocate that respect and talk back to them. Blabba the Hutt as a Twitter account and as a social account is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Congratulations, by the way. I was doing a little background research for this interview and made sure that I checked out some of your episodes. Congratulations on the nominations for Best New Podcast. How did you guys made it in less than a year's time? You made it from starting off to getting to go and be on the podcast stage at Celebration Europe. How did that even come about?
Persistence.
Kate, how did you come on board with the show?
It was basically through Twitter. I had started podcasting about a year before I started on Blabba on a Star Wars Doctor Who podcast. So right before I started Blabba, I found out that podcast would be dropping the Star Wars content of it. So I was like bummed out about that. But it was that same podcast. I had actually asked Jamie to do a comic book review with me. Do you remember which one it was, Jamie?
It was Star Wars number 7, I believe. It was the one shot with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So like we had done this review on that podcast together.
Mm-hmm.
And then also around the same time I was starting my own podcast that I do called Nerfherder Paradise. And so I had been listening to Blabba and like I really liked what I was hearing, especially the Dublin Comic-Con episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like Jamie did a really good job on that with like just it was like what I try to do when I go to cons and everything. So I'd asked him like what equipment he was using and stuff. And then I think it was like right around then he's like, oh, by the way, I'm looking for a co-host if you're interested.
The old equipment question. That's always the in with podcasters.
That's it.
We got our setup started because a friend of ours has an internet radio show every Saturday night. And the first thing we did when we wanted to start getting this thing going was, so, Guy, what kind of microphones do you use? What's your software?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, yeah, here's where you host. Here's how you plug in the board. This is the software you use. Okay, we're off and running. Great.
That's it. So, you're now a radio show host.
Yeah.
So that's basically how it started. And so I was like, yeah, that would be great. I was looking for, some Star Wars podcasting to be doing, especially with The Force Awakens coming out. And the rest is history, basically.
Well, that's something I noticed. There's a lot of female influence going on right now. And I kind of wonder now if we've reached more maybe a saturation point. It's good to have it balanced out gender-wise, but is it almost perpetuating the problem by drawing attention to trying to conquer the problem? Because we've got Rey, we've got Jyn Erso from Rogue One, and all the female characters in the animation as well, and in the books now too. I mean, at some point, do we need to stop pointing out gender specificity and just make it Star Wars fans in general?
I would agree, but I'm going to let Kate, as a lady, I'm going to let Kate answer that.
I don't feel like we've reached a point where female representation is like the norm. Like growing up, when I was a Star Wars fan, I mean, there's Princess Leia, but like there wasn't a whole lot of like role models to look up to with Star Wars other than Princess Leia. But I mean, I think we're definitely going in the right direction with that. I mean, it's cool to go to cons now and you see like all the little girls dressed up like Rey, and Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
I think it's definitely a good thing, but I do agree that I mean, obviously, getting more female into the fandom is going to be good for everybody. But I do agree that like everything is very female centered at the moment, which is fine because it's been so male centered for the last 30 years. But I do think that there is going to be a shift. Probably, I mean, if you think about it, after Rogue One, we've got, the Han Solo movie and then potentially the Boba Fett movie, which are going to be two heavily male-dominated films. And then whatever way Episode 8 goes, and then whatever we get after that, I do think we're going to move back towards that kind of, we had the stories which included, the Jyn Ersos, the Reys, Ahsoka is playing such a heavy role in kind of the later Rebels episodes, Bloodline, Sienna Rey, Ray Sloan. You've got all these really, really powerful women since the new canon came out. But I think now that they've established all those characters, I think we can get to a point where it's just Star Wars fans, male, female, black, white, Asian. I mean, we're just all one big fandom. So Alien, yeah.
Where's the alien representation? Where's my Duros character?
There you go.
Hey, Lulo's getting a lot of love in the comic book series at the moment, especially in Poe.
Really? See, the comics are the one thing I keep up on the books. Again, I use Audible a lot, so I do my listening, not my reading. But the comic books are one thing I just haven't carved out time for. Is there a lot of good material in there to gloss over, or is it more supporting material that isn't necessarily crucial to the understanding of the larger saga?
Kate, I know you've kind of fallen off with some of the comics, and totally understandable because the main Star Wars series has just taken weird turns. To a point where, some of the comics I think don't feel Star Wars anymore. But there are some really good stories that have come out in the kind of the new Star Wars, in the new Marvel days. Lando, for example, probably the best Star Wars arc that's out there at the moment from a comic perspective. Totally, separate to anything that we know, or it doesn't feed into the storyline at all. It's just a separate Lando, story. Shattered Empire was good, which is like literally the day after the Battle of Endor, which was really cool because you meet Poe Dameron's parents in it. And Poe Dameron, his own comics series, had me up until issue 3.
Oh no, I haven't read that one yet.
I don't know the specifics, but I heard it took a strange turn.
It did take a strange turn, and it's back to that kind of, it doesn't feel Star Wars.
Sound like Kate just threw away a few comic books right now.
I'll stick with it though. I mean, sometimes like the Star Wars, the original, the main Star Wars arc, there was like this beefed up steroid using Hutt at one point who had like these big spider legs and stuff, and I was like, no, this is just not right. Like, that was weird. And I understand they need to make, new waves and new turns, but they still need to keep it Star Wars. It still needs to feel Star Wars and not pure science fiction.
Dr. Aphra is pretty awesome.
Aphra is cool, and she's probably one of the best things to have come out of the comic series at the moment.
Okay, making a note of that. I'll have to Google that later. Yeah, a lot of the comics, I tried to start when the canon got rebooted and relaunched just to keep up on things a little bit. The first one that I saw, what was the title of it? It was it just covered the events following the Battle of Endor.
Shattered Empire.
Shattered Empire, yeah. I got into a couple issues of that, and it was kind of interesting. But it didn't really seem to lend that much. By being so close to the central movie stories, it didn't seem to really add too much to that story, and that's where I kind of lost interest. It just seems like they're trying to hook it into something more important to get people interested, but it didn't really complement it or add anything to the story it was trying to latch onto. Yeah,
well, I think what they've done with Shattered Empire is they're setting up something there with, obviously with, you've got the Damerons, you've got Kez Dameron, who's Poe's dad, and then a girl called Shara Bay, who's Poe's mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what they're showing mostly there is that the victory, on Endor was only one small part of the destruction of the Empire. So, like, you can see that after that, that Kez Dameron and Shara Bey get called back into action to kind of finish out the job. And I suppose it's kind of that slow and steady defeat of the Empire, the small little factions. Obviously, the Emperor is dead, Vader is, dead as well, and it's just kind of wiping out those little kind of smaller factions throughout the Empire, and kind of the remnants that do eventually go on, to become, the Resistance, or not the Resistance, the First Order. But I think what it's doing is it's kind of padding whilst also creating a bit of fan service. We're seeing the characters that we love back in comic form and drawn, spectacularly well. But the last bit with I don't know if you got to the final issue.
Not yet, no.
Where basically Luke gives Shara Bey and Kez Dameron a force tree. Okay.
A force
tree?
So
like it's a force tree. So it's a tree that emanates the force. Okay, now it's a little bit ridiculous. It's, again, kind of sits within that not really Star Wars section.
Well, according to Empire Strikes Back, Yoda says everything emanates the Force.
Exactly, but this seems to have like a glowing
extra midichlorians.
It was Yoda's old house.
But it could be leading towards something, because I don't know how far into the kind of news and spoilers and set photos and stuff that you've seen, but there is a tree on A2, so it's a very interesting looking tree. So they could be setting up for something like that, because I know when they were saying in the lead up to the Force Awakens, they were saying that Kylo had Vader's helmet because it contained Force. It contained the dark side. So I think they're kind of the creators and the stories and the story groups seem to be going down this road, that there are certain elements that seem to be quite strong with the Force, and they can be things like old Sith relics or old Force trees. So I think that's what Shattered Empire kind of did. It was kind of introducing that fact.
Yeah, I could see that. Just when Maz hands Rey Luke's saber in Force Awakens, and she has that whole vision sequence, it seemed like they were going down that road of having objects that were imbued with the Force.
Exactly. And I suppose there's another question which falls out of Shattered Empire, and the fact that Luke gave the Damerons the tree, and then it shows at the end the kind of the homestead, the Dameron homestead, with the Force tree growing beside the house. Is Poe's skills as a pilot because he's somewhat Force sensitive? Is it the fact that he's living beside this tree? If this tree emanates and radiates the Force, is it like living next to a power station that it emanates radiation and can infect you? Can you get infected with the radius, within the radius of this Force tree? There's those kind of small questions that might come out of something like Shattered Empire, something that we see that we don't actually make any connections to, because I know there has been a lot of talk about, is Poe slightly Force sensitive, and I think this could be a way that he is without being a part of the lineage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without going too far into Bloodline, because I know that's very new and a lot of people haven't read it yet. They kind of went in that direction a little bit with Leia, where she is aware of things through the Force, but she's not particularly attuned like Luke or someone who has, honed his senses to be more aware of those things.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, again, not to go too deep into it, but there is a reference made to the fact that she decided not to, hone her senses, not to train in the ways of the Jedi, instead to rebuild the galaxy through politics.
Which was welcome, because I remember the old Legends EU she got her own lightsaber and she was training just like Luke, and that never really felt right to me. I always thought that she was...
I'm actually rereading Thrawn, which is where she gets her lightsaber.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird, because Leia's storyline still kind of feels very like the Leia in Bloodline. So sometimes when I'm talking about Bloodline, I'm not sure whether I'm talking about something that happens in Heir to the Empire, because the characters and the kind of situations. I think the new canon is definitely pulling on some of the old canon ideas and storylines.
Yeah, there's a lot of the old Legends stuff that I think they're enjoying in one sense not having George Lucas involved, because all of these other ideas that he would never endorse can now be included in the official stories, and they never would have gotten through before.
Yeah. But this new story group seemed to be doing some great work. Like, everything they've come up with so far has been, well, I mean, maybe not everything, but the majority of everything that's come through has been generally welcomed by myself.
Yeah, the books are largely solid, I think. The comics, I don't really have a lot to go on. The only real misstep I've had so far with the books, and this is pretty common opinion, is Aftermath. I think Aftermath really was not anything like what people were expecting.
Yeah, I think the first of a new series of canon, though, is always going to be a tough thing. And I feel sorry for Chuck. Like, he had so much hype stacked up against him. I think it would have been very hard to actually... And I mean, I think Aftermath, if you were to look at the wide variety of EU, it stands up against most of the EU books, which largely a lot of them weren't perfect either, Mm-hmm. But still, I'm excited to see where he goes with Life Death. And I mean, even Aftermath didn't do much for me, but of the new books, it's still not my least favorite.
Okay. Well, we're running short on time here, so I just want to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah.
Okay, you said that it's not your least favorite book, so what is your least favorite?
My least favorite was The Weapon of a Jedi, which was one of the small kind of young adult books that just basically talked about Luke feeling the Force for like 300 pages.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm glad I skipped those.
Yeah.
I'm actually
the other two are great. Smuggler's Run and what's the other one, Kate?
I don't remember.
Moving Target is the Leia story. They were both brilliant. They were really good.
Okay, those sound like quick reads, too.
Weapon of a Jedi. Yeah, they are. They're cool. They're like 220 pages.
Cool. Okay, I'll have to check those out then. Okay, so I know one of your segments that you start every show with is the Star Wars week. And how was your week in Star Wars?
Kate?
I haven't done much this week, actually. I mean, I had Phoenix Comic-Con a couple weeks ago, so I did a few interviews and my Maz Kanata costume.
Which looked awesome.
Thanks. That's about the most Star Wars stuff I've done.
This week for me actually hasn't been Star Wars at all either. We're actually gonna record our show right after this. We have to figure out what it was. A lot of stuff around the live show in Celebration. I'm just trying to figure out how that's gonna go. Like, there's a lot of kind of admin-y stuff happening at the moment, so I don't know if that fits into the Star Wars week. My week actually this week has been largely around The Last of Us. Do you know the PlayStation game?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great game.
I started playing it. I started playing it like 4 days ago for the first time, and I'm just completely hooked. So my life has been pretty much just The Last of Us and PlayStation for the last while. But no, other than that, I don't think I've done much Star Wars stuff this week. It's been an off week.
It's nice to get a breather in there.
Your week in Star Wars?
My week in Star Wars, actually, kind of a slow news week around here too. I had to stop myself from going and getting another Lego set on my way over here to record, because it's been a couple of weeks and I'm starting to get the itch really bad. Other than that, that's why I asked you about the books. I'm looking for something new to listen to, because I just finished up Bloodline a couple days ago. So that's been pretty much it for me. It's kind of slow in the Star Wars world in general right now with official releases. So there's not a whole lot to go on until Rebels comes.
One that I would 110% recommend to you, if you're looking for something to read, it is the Beijing Natal short.
Yes.
What was the name of that? The Perfect Weapon, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Across the board, that is like one of our top of the new canon.
It's so good. And it's short, too.
Yeah, I heard a sample of that, and I'm just thinking, how engrossing can this be for a little bit character in Maz's castle?
Just listen to it.
Okay, I'll give that one a listen. All right.
Yeah, and I think it's like
give us your report.
I think it's about $2 in the Audible store.
Right in my budget.
So, and I mean, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times at this point, so It's just for a bit character, she actually carries a lot of weight.
Oh, there's a bunch of these things in here now. I'm looking at the Amazon store.
Oh, there's loads of them. Loads of them.
Yeah, the Crimson Corsair and the Lost Treasure of Count Dooku. High Noon on Jakku.
Are those on Audible or are those just the ebooks?
These are just the ebooks.
Oh, okay. Because I think I bought all the ebooks a while ago and I haven't read them yet.
They really do have a story for just about everyone. This is like Tales from Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they released a whole heap of them. Most of which I haven't listened to. Matt actually on our team is he has the entire new canon either in Audible or in ebook form. And you know, I wish I could tell you what his personal favorites are, but I definitely know that Perfect Weapon has been, you know, it's been across the board. I don't know whether I've actually heard anybody give it a poor review.
All right, definitely worth checking out then. So you said you've got some admin-y stuff going for Celebration Europe. How much more planning do you have to do? Do you know how long your time slot's going to be and when you're going to be broadcasting?
Our time slot is 45 minutes, and we are lucky enough to be pairing up with a veteran nerd podcast over here called followingthenerd.com. They are from the north of Ireland and are, you know, very experienced by the ways of live shows and live podcasting. They MC the Star Wars convention here every single year. You know, so we're really lucky to be pairing up with Mark. From an actual planning point of view, we have to decide what our show is actually going to be about.
You might have some material to work with there.
Yeah, I think we should have plenty anyway. Because we have to make it in some way kind of fit what Blabba is and then what Mark is in Following the Nerd. But I reckon it should be easily done because, you know, Marcus, he's such an easygoing guy and knows his stuff really well, like, you know. But I think there's probably something to be gained in the fact that it's been marketed actually by the Jedi News account and by Celebration Europe as the Emerald Hour. So because we're both Irish, so I'm sure there's some kind of
and then there's
an
me.
Irish, and then the Emerald Hour and Kate. You're an honorary Irish girl at this point.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Has he called you lass yet?
I don't think so.
We'll have to do that on episode 24.
There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's just kind of more how do we get the kind of the word out there, you know, because I mean we're very aware of the fact that we're less than 1 year old. You know, we're a little fish in a big pond.
It's a very exciting time.
It is. It's super exciting, and it's a huge. You know, I'm hugely honored to have been selected. You know, I mean, you can only imagine how many people probably went for it. You know, and somehow we got our name in the mix. Hopefully, we won't clash with any major panels or any major events in Celebration.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you'll have to miss your own show to attend those instead. That would be bad.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's going to have to be a pre-record.
Well, Celebration is...
Can we get holograms?
Perfect.
It's not in the budget, Kate. Sorry.
Well, you know, Daisy Ridley has a running double and a fighting double, so maybe you guys can have podcasting doubles.
There you go.
Exactly. That's it.
Well, the Celebration is always full of great stories and memories, and it sounds like you're going to have quite a few more after this next one. So I say best of luck to both of you.
All right, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right, thank you.
May the Force be with you.
Yes, may the Force be with you too. All right, so that is our show for this week, guys. Tell us what you think. The interview is a new format for us. We're going to keep working on it, but we'd like to hear from you. Do you want to hear the interviews, or do you like our usual format better? We're going to mix it up a little bit from time to time. You can reach out to us anytime. Our website is www.nerfherdercouncil.com. You can send us an email through there. You can tweet at the show at NHC Podcast. You can reach JT at DogPoundJedi, AJ at DrakeAdams579, or Steve at JSteve1005. iTunes is always a great place to find us as well. Be sure to leave us a rating and a review on there. We love reviews. Reviews are awesome. They increase our visibility, get our show out in front of more eyeballs. You know, helps us spread the word a little bit. So that's our show for this week. We'll be back next week, just 7 days from now, not the usual 2-week layoff, but we'll have our usual full-length show with our usual full-size cast, over full-size cast. Thank you, John. Fat joke when you're not even on the show. So reach out to us, send us some feedback. Have a great week, everyone, and may the Force be with you.
Bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my nerf herder.
Oh, yeah, that's the stuff. Okay, I think we should get to going on this.